Hey, welcome to the One Piece at a Time Distilling Institute with your host, the alchemist of Indiana's Black Forest, Alan Bishop. Hey, this channel is all about home distilling and legal distilling. If you've got questions, reach out to us in the comments below, social media, or via bishopshomegrown@gmail.com. And don't forget to check out thealchemistcabinet.com.
Hey, back again with your questions and another talking head video here at the One Piece at a Time Distilling Institute. I've got a great one today. I'm probably going to get this gentleman's name wrong, more than likely would be my guess. But it is, I believe it is, well, he ends it with Patrick from Hungary, which is awesome. So I can't say I'm not even going to try to say his last name. His first name's Patrick, that's all that matters. If I try to say his last name, I'm for sure going to mess it up. Anyways, hi Alan, I found your channel on YouTube and I enjoy watching your videos. I did a George Washington style rye mash, 60% rye, and I want to distill it and age it in a bad motivator barrel. Bad mo's are always a good option. Again guys, I know they're hard to get on the waiting list, right? I know you can't always even get exactly the barrel that you want, but they're working on that and I think they'll get there in time. You know, and 1030s are nice to play around with too, especially if you want to do bench trials of stuff. So mashing and fermenting on the grain went well. And I siphoned off most of the liquid and pressed the liquid, what was left in the grains, in a fruit press. It's been in a carboy for a day and I noticed there's a lot of sediment, like lees and wine, in the bottom. Carboy size is approximately 6 gallons. I have filled 2 of those. I have a small still, 9 gallons, with a built-in manual agitator built for making palinka and distilling fruit pulp. It's heated with gas. My question is, can I run the sediment together with the clear liquid or will I scorch even if I use the agitator? Will the sediment give any off taste to the final product? I don't want to waste, but I don't want to mess it up either. I've attached 2 pictures, one is of the still and one of the carboy, and I did not print the pictures, but I am super envious of that still. I've always wanted one of those cool Palinka or Rakia or Slivovitsia stills with a manual agitator on the side. I'm very surprised that no one in the United States have figured out how to do that yet from what I've seen any of the still builders. But I will tell you, Wayne Herbert at Ozark Stillworks has obviously figured out something alongside me with my help, the air agitation one that goes into the Johnny 5 model, the submarine still. I just recently did a rye whiskey in there, 1075 mash bill. Nobody in their right mind should be running 1075 rye whiskey mash bills at home on the grain. Not a scorch at all, other than one tiny little mark on the bottom where when my pump gave up on me, I had to switch out pumps. I'd turned the still off. And I forgot to hit the air before I turned the still back on. I had one little bitty tiny scorch mark, but other than that, nothing. And right now I've got apple in there, multiple pounds of apple pulp that I put through the blender that I cooked in there and fermented, and I'm currently fermenting in there. We're gonna make sure that that didn't scorch, and then we're gonna directly distill it right there in the sub. So you can cook, ferment, and distill all in one vessel. It's besides the point. Anyway, so the question is it normal for that liquid to have all that stuff fall out like a wine lees? Yes, absolutely. So a lot of that is protein, etc., or little bits of grain that you weren't able to get out, or even yeast cells building up as it's fermenting. There's nothing wrong with that. That's absolutely normal for an all grain run, especially a rye like that in particular, at 60% rye. You are going to see that, so there's nothing wrong with that. As far as leaving that in the still, if I were you, man, and I had that manual agitator, hell yeah, I'd leave that in there. Now I'm going to tell you, you're going to be turning that agitator quite often, because so the difference between, say, like Palinka or Rakia or something like that, where you're dealing with larger size pieces of fruit, you know, that float a little easier, is that stuff's going to have a tendency to want to keep sinking over and over again. So every few minutes I'd be turning that thing, you know, maybe even put a motor on it to get it to turn of its own accord. And honestly, if you could get a motor put on there with a flywheel that would turn of its own accord, you could run all grain all the time if you wanted to, just something to keep it up off the bottom. And all you gotta do is keep it running until it gets up and boiling. Once it starts to boil, you can turn it off and the boiling action will keep everything up off the bottom of the still as well. As far as it adding odd flavors or anything like that, so the truth of the matter is that rye whiskey, that George Washington rye whiskey mash bill, was always run on the grain. It's still run on the grain at Mount Vernon to this very day, and I run it on the grain at work all the time. In fact, that 1075 rye mash bill that we just talked about that I did in the submarine, that was the George Washington rye mash bill because I love that particular mash bill. Honestly, with rye, with true all grain rye, if you don't run on the grain, you don't get the true flavor of the rye, in my opinion. It becomes too light. It becomes too uneven. I did it a few times here. You know, I showed you guys doing lautering when I was actually doing that cook and sparging. with a Dr. Gratis, which worked okay. It was kind of a pain in the ass. It would have been a whole lot easier if I'd had some rice hulls or something of that nature. And I know Wayne over at Ozark Steelworks has also shown off doing that as well with like a step mash method and all that stuff. And his was better than mine. I just admit that his rye whiskey was better than mine that I make at home for sure. Now, what I make at work, I feel like is pretty fucking good in general, and one of my favorite rye whiskeys, if I do say so myself. I often find myself leaning into the Solomon Scott rye whiskey almost more than any other product that I've ever really made in a professional setting. Nonetheless, yeah, if you can leave that solid stuff in there, leave it in there. And I think with that little agitator you've got on there, I think you'll be just fine. Just keep it turning. Like I said, if you can put a flywheel on there and keep it turning all the time, you'll be fantastic. And next time you can leave all of your grain in. I hope it turns out really well, and I hope you'll keep us updated with how it did turn out. I am a huge fan of rye whiskey, as long as it's not 95.5 MGP. You know, not putting MGP down. They kept the lights on for Indiana after Prohibition. But 95.5 was always meant to be a blending component, not a whiskey of its own accord. And to me, it goes a little bit towards too much of a fennel characteristic, and sometimes like a black cherry cough syrup, like cheap off-brand Robitussin, and I just can't do that. It's not my thing. But as always, guys, keep your questions coming, and I'll keep answering them here on the One Piece at a Time Distilling Institute. Also getting ready to drop a few new episodes of the One Piece at a Time Sacred and Profane podcast over on Spotify. If you've not checked that out, go over there and check it out. It's kind of a spot, you know, where I do little 20-minute podcast episodes of things that I find that are interesting when I have time to talk about them and go a little bit more in depth than what the videos ordinarily do. And I could definitely use your subscription, your 5-star review, and you guys spreading the word about it. All right, later, guys. Love y'all.